Hey guys, I've done a couple of tanking guides and I thought it'd be good to learn more about the role that helps keep the meat shields up. So, here's one for disc healing. So, the last time I used the healing class was around the start of Mists, and that was with the Druid. The role sure, pretty much has changed since then. Health and mana management has become, especially mana management, has become extremely important unless you outgear content or have been healing with the same class forever. Now, I might go back to healing with my Druid, but the Priest has my attention for now, especially discipline healing. I always liked absorbs or damage prevention as opposed to catching up to the missing amount of health. It feels safer, and I like the graphical effect of priest healing. So anyway, let's jump right into it. As with my tanking guides, let's start off with the talents. You can also click on any of the links you're seeing right now to jump into specific parts of this guide. Okay, let's get to your talents. So for your first pick, my suggestion is to run with Desperate Prayer. That's mainly because of the on-demand healing. Now, the cooldown is quite lengthy though, as opposed to Angelic Bulwark's Absorb. But the important part here is that you have control over whenever you want to use it. Now, if you need frequent saves, then Bulwark is an option because it becomes available every 90 seconds. Guys might have its uses, but it's pretty situational in PvE. You can probably use it if you, for some reason, you get aggro on some stray mobs, but yeah, it's very situational. Now for tier 2, or the level 30 row, it's a speed boost toss-up between Body and Soul and Angelic Feather. Now, Body and Soul is a great choice, and mainly because it's targetable. I also like Angelic Feather, as it is available for anyone's use, with the boost lasting for 6 seconds as opposed to Body and Soul's 4 seconds. Now, for Feather, keep in mind though that targeting can be an issue, and it will also require that someone step on the Feather to actually receive the buff. Now for tier 3, Mindbender is actually a very good choice if you're starting out as a priest, and it has the advantage of having a very low cooldown of 1 minute. Now once you get the hang of healing and managing your mana, I suggest using Solace, but you gotta make sure that you keep blasting away with it every time it's available. Or you can also go for Surge, as free and instant flash heals are pretty good. So again, yeah, Mindbender if you're just starting out or you're concerned over your mana, and the other two choices if you're comfortable. For tier 4, you can pretty much go for any of the choices here, but I like Scream for basically having it on by default for that AoE fear, and that's mainly because in case I'm interested in doing a few battlegrounds. Sometimes I also go with Tendrils for the root, but most of the time it's basically just Psychic Scream. Tier 5 is pretty much about power infusion for the haste and the mana cost reduction to your spells. Be reminded that this ability is on a 2-minute cooldown once you use it, and the buff will only last for 20 seconds. Now, another option is Twist of Fate. It can also be helpful if everyone's health bars often look pretty awful most of the time. If that is not the normal situation for you, you're running LFR or normal raids, then I am guessing that power infusion should be the way to go. Tier 6 is about my favorite AoE healing spell, which is Cascade. Now, what it does is that it launches a healing effect to one target, then jumps 4 more times. Each jump causes the effect to split, with no target being healed more than twice. It does have a lengthy 25-second CDs though, so make sure to manage it properly. It's also important to know that you have to target the raid member that is furthest from you to maximize the heal. I don't use it very often, but you can also use Halo for a more, how shall we, if I describe it as a tight and controlled effect. Now, for your last talent pick, it will come down to basically which is more useful for a given fight. If your tank is taking too much damage, then it's Clarity of Will. If the damage is pretty much raid-wide, then go with Mending. Well, you do have another option, which is Saving Grace, but the drawback for that is just too big a sacrifice in terms of how it affects your succeeding heals. So basically just choose between Clarity or Mending. Right, time to get into your stat priority. So for Disc Priest, it's pretty straightforward. The first one you'll need is Intellect, second is Mastery, third is Crit Strike, and fourth is Haste. Now, Intellect is, well, it's simply the best stat. It comes naturally with your gear or through some items that provide the proc. What it does, it simply increases the potency of your healing spells. Now, second is Mastery. It's the second best stat as it increases the effectiveness of your shields by about 13% and your healing by about half that amount. Now, this is due to your Shield Discipline Mastery passive. It's best to make sure that this is present in most of your gear, as Disc Priests have very strong absorbs and shields. Now, Crit Strike is important in generating those absorbs through Divine Aegis. This makes sure that you increase the potential of getting the most out of your Shield Discipline Mastery. Fourth is again Haste, and it's a good stat right after Crit, mainly because it reduces your cast time and global cooldown. It also works well with our Borrowed Time passive since we'll be spamming shields all day. Now, Borrowed Time, what it does is that it increases the haste gain from all sources by 40% after casting Power Word Shield. Now, there is one more stat that I'd like to mention, and that's Spirit. While it's not shown on your screen right now, but it is also an important stat. Grab those items that have them whenever you can. Once you can manage your mana properly, then you can start to move over your points into other stats and swapping out other gear for gear that has more intellect or mastery and stats like that. Now, your buffs like enchants, food, and flask buffs will also follow the same priority. I've outlined them whenever applicable. Anything you can craft on your own or get from your alts are preferred to avoid spending so much gold. Now, I'm showing you, as with my other guides, the budget versions. Of course, if you have the money to buy more expensive ones, then of course go for them. So you have right here your enchant buffs, your food buffs, flask, and your potion. Anyway, for gearing, of course, it also follows the same priority. This will also mean managing the tier sets you may get and using the ones with the best stats against the useful bonuses. Okay, so let's get into the Disc Priest abilities and gameplay. Well, let's get into your abilities that haven't been covered in the talent section. We'll start off with your healing and absorb spells, then go through the skills with long cooldowns and ease into the gameplay talk. Now, for your spells, the first one and the most obvious one is Power Word Shield. It's your basic ability and it's preventive in nature, unlike the standard healing spell. So the shield is quite amazing as it has multiple effects, so it can basically reduce damage spikes. As mentioned, it can also proc Borrowed Time, which increases your haste, and the application can actually crit, which means it can double or double the amount absorbed. Now, while we're on this one, as Power Word Shield does apply a debuff on the target, which is Weakened Soul, which prevents you from applying another Power Word Shield just like that. So what Glyph of Weakened Soul does is that it reduces the Weakened Soul debuff effect by 2 seconds. So it's not so much a suggestion for this guide, but it's really mandatory that you have this one. The second spell is, well, it's not really a spell that you can cast, but it's just an ability that activates automatically, and it's called Divine Aegis. I mentioned this earlier. So it's one of your signature absorbs. So what happens is that every time you crit with a healing ability and it's multi-strikes, Aegis places an absorb on the affected party or raid member with what would have been the additional 100% heal from the crit. So additional procs will be added to the Aegis if there is still any present, but the duration of the Aegis will only refresh. So Aegis is pretty much a very passive ability that priests have. You don't even have to think about it, it's just automatically applied whenever you crit. Next is Penance. So it's your key healing ability, which is normally used on targets which normally take high or continuous amounts of damage. So while we're on this one, I do have a glyph suggestion. It's called a Glyph of Penance. So what the glyph does is that it allows movement, but it increases the cost of your penance spell. So Well, it's quite useful, but the 20% increase in mana cost, well, you can actually feel that in the long term during a fight. So, again, just make sure you weigh things out. Which one is more important, the mobility while healing, or uh, being able to save up on mana if you're not using the glyph? Next is Prayer of Mending. It's a key healing ability or a key healing spell for the class itself. So it sits on a target, then heals damage taken with the buff, and randomly jumps to another raid member for a maximum of 5 jumps. So try to keep mending up on basically all possible members of your raid group. Next spell is Heal. So this is your basic healing spell with a lengthy cast time of 2.5 seconds. Well, at least that's your base cast time. The other alternative is Flash Heal, so which has the same output as your heal spell, but it has a faster cast time of 1.5 seconds, and it costs more than double the amount of mana to get off. Now, the standard spell to use is normally Heal, but in very tricky situations, switch over to Flash Heal, as it will be your go-to spell. Now, Prayer of Healing is a powerful AoE healing ability, but only affects the party you're grouped with. So, another AoE skill to use is Holy Nova, which is it's a pretty it's an instant heal that affects allies near the caster and damages nearby enemies. So keep in mind that it has a positional requirement and may put you in places where you shouldn't be. Next one is Atonement. It's actually a passive ability that provides healing every time Smite, Penance, Solace, and Holy Fire deals damage. So while it gives 10%, 100% healing of any damage you deal from those spells, it isn't very strong. Next up is another passive, which is called Evangelism. So this is triggered by the same spells in Atonement, but only factors in the direct damage portion. So consuming the stacks it generates will increase your healing depending on the amount of Evangelism stacks. So it's good to prepare your stacks if you expect big damage. Now, while we're on this one, since I've talked about the Holy Fire spell a couple of times, I do have a glyph suggestion, which is Glyph of Holy Fire. So what this does is that it extends the range of your Holy Fire, Solace, and Smite spells, so which is quite good if you do want to make sure that your evangelism stacks are always kept up. For your lengthier cooldown spells, next is Pain Suppression. So it is a damage reduction ability with a lengthy cooldown of 3 minutes. So it reduces the damage taken by 40% for 8 seconds. What's great about this cooldown is that it can be cast on anyone, not just yourself. Like I said, it can be cast on anyone who's expected to take high amounts of damage. The next lengthy cooldown you have is Power Word Barrier. So it's an area of effect damage reduction ability that lasts for 10 seconds. So keep in mind that it only affects a very small circular area. Now, priests also have other abilities, and the first one is Fear Ward. So what the ability does is that it provides fear immunity to the target for the initial fear that lands on them. Now, the cooldown for Fear Ward is lengthy at 3 minutes. Next is a very important spell, which is Purify. So what this ability does is that it removes magic and disease effects on the target with an 8-second cooldown. Now, next is Mask Dispel. So it's a useful AoE targeted ability that removes one magical effect from an ally and an enemy unit. One other spell is Shackle Undead. So it's a crowd control ability that affects only one undead target for 50 seconds. Next is Fade. So if for some reason you do get aggro, this ability is useful. It has a 30-second cooldown. And next up is Leap of Faith. So, well, this is a fun spell actually. It's the healer's version of Death Grip. So what it does is that it pulls one raid member towards you to your location and the ability has a 1.5 minute cooldown. So it's quite useful if you want to yank someone out of some deadly AoE effect, or basically you just want to help someone reposition themselves. And last ability I can mention is Levitate. So it allows water walking and reduces the falling speed to remove damage. However, any damage will cancel the levitate effect. Okay, let's get into your gameplay as a Disc Priest. Now, the playstyle is pretty simple whether it's single target or AoE situations. For single target situations, keep the following spells in mind. So the first one is Power Word Shield, second is Prayer of Mending, third is Penance, fourth is Heal, and of course, Flash Heal. Now, use the spell which suits the target. For example, if you'll be using Penance whenever, well, of course, on your tank, for most of the time it's going to be your tank. Shield is kept up on as many applicable targets, basically everyone, if you can. And Bending should be kept up as much as you can also on as many targets possible. So for AoE scenarios, it's also pretty simple. Now, because you are a Disc Priest, you should be making use of your Power Word Shield, Prayer of Mending, Prayer of Healing, Holy Nova, and then Cascade or Halo. Now, Shield and Mending are used in the same way as you would in your single target scenario. Prayer of Healing comes into play when the damage to everyone starts to increase, but just don't forget that it will only affect the raid members that are grouped with you as in a party. If the AoE damage is not that bad, or those affected are not in your party, then use Nova, and then just be aware of the positional requirements for that one. And then lastly, just keep in mind that you also have your tier 6 talents to use, and that's either Cascade or Halo. Okay, macros and add-ons time. As mentioned in my other guides, there are many macros out there on the web that you can use. But for this guide, I'll only recommend one macro, which is a mouse over macro that you can use for all your spells. Now, for example, this is what you're seeing on your screen right now. It's a heal mouse over macro. Just replace the heal spell with a different one if you're interested. So what this mouse over macro, it's convenient in that it allows more freedom on who you can target, and it basically also allows you to move around as you're casting healing spells. So if you don't want to use this macro for all your spells, then you can also use one of my add-on suggestions, which is Healbot or Click. So for either Healbot or Click, it's a mixture of key binding and hover casting, much like the mouse over macro I just mentioned earlier. But it's just that with these two add-ons, it requires no macros to be created per spell, as the add-ons do most of the work for you. Now, between the two, I find Click to be better, as it doesn't add another layer to your user interface. So if you're interested, just head on over to curse.com for the latest version. One more add-on I want to recommend, as I do also recommend this in all my guides, it's ELV UI. So it's a pretty standard UI replacement that I've been using since forever. Anyway, if you're interested, just check out tukui.org. And that is it for this healing guide. So it's been pretty fun going back into healing, and I'm pretty happy with the choice to go Disc Priest on this one. So anyway, like this video if you liked it, and tell me which healing class is fun for you, and not just because it tops the HPS meters, but basically which healing class is fun for you. So anyway guys, subscribe for more content from me, and thanks for watching.